history. Derek Lewis, who literally just decided I'm going to stand up now.
UFC 5 ground game. Loved by some, hated by very, very many people. But do not fear. If you are one of those people that rage at the ground game, I have come to help. Alright guys, so in this video I'm going to be showing you how to defend every transition from half guard. So this is actually my second video in the Mastering the Ground Defense series, so if you're an absolute pleb and missed the first one, I just cover the basics of ground defense and full guard defense. So if you are new to the ground game, I would recommend watching that video first, then coming back to this one. Alright, let's get into half guard defense. So here we're going to be looking at when you're in top half guard and your opponent tries to transition from the bottom. So the first direction we're going to be looking at is when your opponent tries to transition to full guard. So when defending the full guard transition, you have to be quick at denying it, as it's the fastest transition the bottom player can do. So the key thing to watch is the hand that is holding your arm. So once they start to transition, that hand will come down and push on your knee. So as you can see, their left arm starts to move and push on your leg. That is when you want to flick the stick. Now, to know which way to flick the stick, you want to flick the stick in the direction of whatever arm is pushing the knee. So for example, in the video, the opponent's left arm is pushing on the knee, so you want to flick the stick left. However, if you're on the right side, their right arm will start to push on the knee, and you want to flick the stick right. Next position is when the opponent starts to transition to back sitting. So this transition is quite slow, so you do have a bit of time to defend it. But the thing to look out for is when your opponent's hand that is on the top of your head moves to grab your wrist, and then they begin to shift their body around to your back. So as this transition is happening, you have to flick the stick in the direction their body is moving. So for example, in the video, the opponent grabs the right wrist and then shifts to the right of your character. So in turn, you would flick the stick right. When you're on the left side, it would just be the opposite. So the transition would look the same, but you just flick the stick to the left. The next position is when your opponent is going for the full guard reversal. So just like the back sitting, this transition is a bit of a slower one, so you do have a bit more time to react. But what you're looking for in the animation is when your opponent's hand that is on the back of your head moves and goes under your arm and lifts your character upwards. So as this happens, you want to flick the stick upwards. So as you can see in the video, it reaches under and lifts your character upwards. And now it does look the same from the other side, so there won't be much confusion either side you're on. So that was all the basic movements. Now we'll be looking at defending the submissions from top half guard. So first up is the Kimura. So the Kimura submission is the only transition from half guard that has a different animation to the basic movements. So the things you want to look out for, instead of your opponent putting their hand on your knee for the full guard transition, they'll use their hand on the back of your head to reach over and put their hand on your shoulder. So when they put their hand on your shoulder, you want to flick the stick the direction of whatever way their hand has had to reach across to. So for example, in the video, the opponent is reaching over to the left to put their hand on your shoulder. So in turn, you would want to flick the stick to the left. Now, this animation is a very small movement, so you do have to keep an eye out as to not get caught in the submission. So I will quickly show you on screen the other advanced movements and submissions, but they are the same animations as the basic movements we just covered. So once you have those basic movements down, you will be able to defend the Darce choke and upward heel hooks quite easily, but I've just shown them on screen as well so you can see what they look like. Now, just before we get into bottom half guard defense, there is a secret submission counter you can do when your opponent does the upwards transition. Now, to do this counter, you have to hold the defense button as usual of R2 or RT if you're on Xbox, but also you have to hold in L2 or LT, and then you flick the stick upwards to defend once your opponent starts to transition. And what this will do is your character will then roll over and get your opponent in a Darce counter choke, as seen in the video. Okay, moving on to bottom half guard defense, and the first move we're going to look at is when your opponent is trying to transition to side control. So the key thing to look out for in this animation is your opponent will place both their hands on your chest and then begin to push themselves into the direction of side control. Now, to defend this, you want to flick the stick whatever direction the head starts to point. So, for example, as you can see in the video, the opponent's hands go on the chest and then the head points to the left, so I flick the stick to the left. Now, it's the same from the other side, so if you're on the right side, the opponent will place the hands on the chest and then the head will start to point to the right, so you flick the stick to the right. Next up is when your opponent tries to transition to mount. So the key things you want to see in this animation is your opponent will reach back to try and push on your leg. So as this animation is happening, you want to flick the stick the direction wherever they have reached to. So for example, in the video, the opponent has reached to the right to push the leg back. Therefore, you would flick the stick to the right. So the same animation will occur when it's from the other side. The opponent will reach to the left to push the leg, so you flick the stick to the left. So last of the basic moves is to stop the opponent posturing up. Now, to defend this transition, it will always be to flick the stick upwards, no matter what side you're on. Now, what you need to look out for in the animation is the opponent will begin to push off your character, and the head will actively try to move upwards. So, as you can see in the video, as soon as your opponent does that movement, you want to flick the stick upwards. Okay, moving on to the only advanced transition you have to defend from bottom half guard, which is the get up transition. Now, this transition is one of the easier ones to defend, as it is quite slow compared to the normal posture up, and it has a much more telling animation, but the animation is your opponent begins to crawl backwards from your character, as you can see in the video. So as they begin to do this, you're going to want to flick the stick upwards. It's worth noting as well that if you flick the stick up quick enough, you will actually catch the opponent in a reversal and your character will end up on top. And finally is defending against the submissions from bottom half guard. Now, there are two submissions from half guard that you have to watch out for. Luckily, both of them have the same animation and go the same way. So these two submissions are the arm triangle and the Von Flue choke. So in the video here, I'm showing you the Von Flue choke, but the arm triangle is the exact same animation. Now, the animation is the opponent will begin to grab at the arm that is on the top of their head. So when this happens, you want to flick the stick the direction of whatever arm they are trying to grab. So as you can see in the video, the opponent grabs at your left arm, therefore you would flick the stick left. Now, just like the advanced get up, if you flick the stick quick enough, then you'll end up reversing your opponent and you'll end up on top, as you can see in the video. Alright guys, and that ends all the transitions from half guard. If you enjoyed, I have more videos like this about other positions coming out, so subscribe to stay in the loop for when they come out, and thanks for watching!